What's your name?
My name is Emma Mary Jane Fowler.
Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Edinburgh, in Scotland, so I guess that's where I'm from, UK.
How old are you?
57.
What country were you born in?
Scotland.
What was life like growing up?
Well, having said I was born in Scotland, actually, we did move to England when I was about 4.5. So, gosh, life growing up. It was probably pretty idyllic, actually, as a young child. I've got a brother very close in age, and we lived in a tiny, tiny little village, and were encouraged to play outside a lot. So we had a lot of mud pie making in the garden, and we had a woodland at the back of the house that we played in, and we had bikes that we could ride up and down the street because there wasn't any through traffic, and very sort of outdoorsy life with lots of painting of butterfly pictures and just nice things as a young child.
What did you do for entertainment?
Well, butterfly pictures, mud pies, lots of reading, lots of storybooks. We did have a television, but not until I was about 7 or so, which was really unusual. But I did have quite old-fashioned parents who believed in playing outside and, making your own entertainment. So, yeah, lots of sort of, I guess, role play, dressing up, made lots of forts and castles for teddies out of cardboard boxes, and cooking and that sort of thing.
And speaking of parents, what did your parents do for work?
Well, they were both trained as vets, which is why I was born in Edinburgh, because they met at veterinary college. And my mum actually didn't work until I was about probably 12 or so, because it was very important to her to be able to raise her children. So she was a stay-at-home mum until then, and then she worked in veterinary practice. And my dad had done sort of further qualifications on top of his veterinary studies and worked in the development of medicines. So, that's... I wasn't allowed to tell anybody that, though, because that was a big secret.
And if anything, what did your parents argue about?
Well, slightly strangely, they didn't argue about anything at all, but it's actually not strange because they actually didn't talk to each other particularly. So they just weren't very conversational at all. So I wasn't really aware of arguments, but I equally wasn't aware of chit-chat conversation. Although, as I'm saying that, I think the only thing, it wouldn't have been an argument, but stress levels would have raised when we were on a long car journey, and apparently the children would be behaving very badly in the back of the car, which would be stressful to my dad, and so my mum would have to quieten us down, old-fashioned style.
What was your dream as a child?
I probably had a few dreams, probably most of them to do with getting new items for my Cindy doll to wear, or getting her a plastic pony so she could, jump over her pretend jumps, and sort of materialistic child wishes. But I think the one that lasted with me the longest was the concept of when I was a grown-up, I might have enough money to buy a whole box of toffee logs, because we belonged to a sailing club, and I think we were given 10 pence on a Sunday to buy some sweets, and I could get 5 toffee logs with my 10 pence, but they were in this big box with like 200 toffee logs in, and my dream was to have a whole box of toffee logs, which ironically I could probably have bought myself since then, and actually it hasn't been quite as important.
And perhaps quite similar, but what was one thing you wanted but couldn't?
One thing I wanted but couldn't. I did really want to have some clothes with a sort of not own brand, but some not homemade clothes. So you said about my mum sort of believing in the old-fashioned values, and she made our clothes a lot, and she was very good at it. But I did hanker after having a jumper or a sweatshirt or something that had a shop label in it.
What was your dream job?
Gosh, my dream job probably was the job that I ended up doing without really realising necessarily it was my dream job. We used to go to London every year because my dad's parents lived there, and I knew from a very early age that I really wanted to live in London. That was my plan, was to somehow live in London as soon as I possibly could, which I did. I went to music college in London when I was 18. Having only just realised at about 17 that you actually could be a professional musician, and that was a way of earning a living. And so I went to London and studied music and became a professional musician. So that was my dream job.
What was the style/fashion at the time?
Well, at the time of going to London, or
At a time of significance in your life.
time of significance, okay, probably actually then the time of going to London. So 1986 was when I went. And so it was the 1980s. It was big skirts. It was new romantics, big hair, big earrings, very sort of feminine clothes, and big hats. Everything was big, clearly, by the sounds of things. So yeah, I probably enjoyed that fashion very much.
What was one hardship you faced growing up or throughout your life?
A hardship that I recall was that I was given a lovely nightie one year when I was probably about 9 years old. And it was red. I mean, I could literally I could make it, you know. It was red, it had sort of blue trim on it, and it had really significantly, it had frills across the top of it. And my granny thought this nightie was way too good to be a nightie, and that it needed to be a party dress. And so I was sent off to a friend's birthday party in my nightie with assurances that no one would know it was a nightie. And that it was a beautiful party dress. And literally, as soon as I walked through the door, everyone was like, "Why are you coming in 90?" And so I did feel quite sorry for myself that day.
Tell me a favourite story from your youth.
I think probably my favourite story was when I was, I think, 14 or maybe 15, and I had got a babysitting job down our lane, and it was a regular job, and I was paid, it just seemed like so much money. I can't remember how much it was, but it was just so much more money than I'd ever had. And it was every Friday night, and it only lasted a couple of months, unfortunately, but about 3 or 4 weeks into this babysitting job, it was my mum's birthday, and she was working long hours at the time, but I had enough money and enough independence to be able to go to the shop and buy exactly what I wanted so we could do a party for her when she got home from work. So, of course, being 14 years old and having been brought up very nicely with very wholesome wholemeal food and all the rest of it, I bought white bread rolls and fish paste and meat paste and things we never normally had, and fancy biscuits and loads of crisps and everything that I loved and would always want to be able to eat in abundance. And we set it all out with, so my brother and sister and myself set it all out on the table when we knew Mum was due to come home, and we all hid behind the curtains when we heard her car pull up. And turned the lights out, and then she came in and turned the lights on, and happy birthday. And it was just a really, really lovely, she was just super knocked out with it all, and yeah, I loved that. Very happy memory.
What was your favourite birthday present?
Oh, favourite birthday present? Oh, gosh. I Can I do a favourite Christmas present?
Of course. Sure. A favourite present.
A favourite present. I was probably about 6 or 7 years old and was given a clockwork car. And it was like a real old-fashioned thing that would be in a gangster movie with the sort of running plates on it and things like that. It was about this big, and it had a key to wind it up, and it actually fired sparks out of its exhaust pipe at the back. And I'm sure, I don't even know if it is my most favourite present, but it's just the one I remember the clearest as being the most sort of unusual and very special.
And what were Christmases like?
Always family events, always get-togethers, never just, the five of us in our household. Always with grandparents, so taking it in turns at different grandparents' houses each year. And Father Christmas would visit overnight and leave presents in a giant sock at the end of the bed. And then lots of presents from lots of people during the day and lots of food. But of course, about 4 hours after, you kind of already starving, but that's just Christmas. And lots of sweets. And yeah, that was Christmas. Playing board games, Monopoly especially, did always go on a bit too long. Yeah, family time.
Brian, thank you very much. What's your name?
Connor,
Where are you from?
England,
How old are you?
20.
What country were you born in?
England,
What was life like growing up?
very interesting. I grew up, my mum was a nanny, so I grew up around a lot of children, almost like a nursery kind of environment. And I feel like that's been nothing but good for me, to be honest. Made me a very adaptable person, and a lot of people I consider my brothers and sisters.
What did you do for entertainment?
I'd play football and I'd play a lot of video games.
What did your parents do for work?
My dad, his whole life has been a tyre fitter, and my mum was a nanny.
If anything, what did your parents argue about?
A lot of the time, my parents would argue about what's for dinner, was a big thing to argue about, and timings, a lot of time.
What was your dream as a child?
My dream was to always be a footballer. I always wanted to be a footballer. But my main dream, sort of adding on to that, was to be rich. I always wanted to be rich.
What was one thing you wanted to do, but couldn't?
So it's going to sound... One thing that always comes to mind when I think about what I wanted to do when I was younger, I always wanted to be able to turn into some sort of like, some animal. I always wanted to turn into an animal.
What was your dream job?
Well, I always thought fashion was Nike and Adidas. I don't know why. I thought tracksuits were fashionable, but that was just me being young and silly. Now I'm looking back on it. That wasn't fashionable at all.
What is a hardship that you have faced?
A hardship that I faced. So there's multiple, I suppose. When my grandma died, that was very, very hard. That really upset me for quite a while. But another hardship I faced, I think I did these football trials. I was consistently going to these football tryout things. My parents were paying quite a lot of money for it as well. And I remember one day they got an email saying they didn't want to keep me on. That was like around, I was 15. And that really upset me. And that was sort of like a moment in my life that made me think about what I wanted to do.
Tell me your favorite story.
Favorite story. It's hard to pick one, I suppose. A lot of them, I suppose. I remember one time, my mum, my dad, my sister, my granddad, and my grandma we were meant to be going to Great Yarmouth, but they decided that they didn't decide. On the way there, they surprised us, and we were going to Cornwall instead, which I'd always loved. And we were spending a week in Cornwall, and I just remember spending time with my granddad and my dad, walking through the hills in Cornwall, walking along the beaches. But I suppose another favorite story is I always like there was the last day when my mum was a nanny, and all the kids mum was to go after. We all came together one last time. We went to this place called Pegston Hill. My mum and dad just free roam around there. We had a great time. I was 8, but exchanged stories, reflected on the past, and talked about how it's all gonna be over.
What was your favourite birthday present?
Favorite birthday present? What I suppose what made me feel the most joy in the moment was getting Skylanders, like an actual figure of Skylander. I remember it was this one. It was Trigger Happy. I really wanted them, and I almost cried when I got it.
What were Christmases like?
Christmases were, sounds corny, they were always so magical. Like I remember I could never sleep on Christmas Eve, and when like my dad pretended to be Santa Claus, I'd always go to hear him. I remember always waking up on Christmas Day, presents under the tree, stacked presents under the tree, and all my family came around. So my grandparents would come around, my granny used to come around, we'd have a massive Christmas dinner at the table. But it's pretty standard, you know. We play Christmas music and we'd and then Boxing Day and then New Year's Day, all sort of same thing. Family will come around, have a big meal, open presents, and yeah, magical.